I'm in a public toilet with a homeless guy, and he's helping me to inject heroin into my neck. I'm too sick to do it myself. The sickness has caused my hands to shake so violently that I've snapped my own needle. My arms are too bruised and raw and scarred and hard from where I've injected myself thousands of times with crack and heroin over 3 years. So we are using his needle, now that he's finished using it on himself. I know that I'm risking death. I don't care. I know that I'm risking catching a disease like hepatitis or HIV, but I don't care. I've stopped caring. It's now the day after my 26th birthday, and I'm lying on a cold metal table. The surgeon tells me that the anti-opiate implant that he's just inserted into my groin will need replacing in a few months' time. He then takes me upstairs to see the psychiatrist. My mum and my dad are there. When the psychiatrist tells me that he thinks that I should go out and buy some heroin, my face lights up like a Christmas tree. He explains to me that the reason he is telling me to do this is because he knows that I'm going to do it anyway. They always do. So I take his advice, and the next day I go out and I buy some heroin. Because of the damage that I've inflicted on my body, the least traumatic place that I can now inject myself is in my feet. So I take off my shoes, I take off my socks, and I shoot up. I feel nothing. Zero. I feel no warm river running through me. I feel no overwhelming sense of calm. And the voice inside my head that normally says, "Tomorrow I'll stop taking drugs," has disappeared entirely. And I coldly start to remember what it feels like to be by myself. As I started to think about what had gone wrong in my life, I started to think about how, as is the case with most addicts and people who suffer from mental health problems, my issues started early. It began at school. My teacher is carrying me out of the classroom. I'm sobbing. All the kids are laughing at me. They think that I'm stupid. When I was unable to answer one single question in the maths exam, I did the only thing that any normal, rational person would do given those circumstances. I fainted. Actually, I didn't faint. I was pretending. 10 years go by, and I'm still pretending. I've got myself a job as a stockbroker on a trading floor. The phones are ringing, the lights are flashing. The 10 computer screens in front of my eyes are buzzing with the latest market info. The FTSE 100 is down. The Dow Jones is up. The Nasdaq is starting to stabilize. And I've got no fucking idea what's going on. Alon, the senior trader, is screaming at me. I panic. I feel stupid. I feel ashamed.
why did I put myself here? Why am I doing this? On the day that I got sacked from that job, believe it or not, I took a lot more heroin than I normally would. It helped me to stop caring. And when you stop caring, it becomes almost second nature to take dangerous risks. And my life descended into chaos. I'd swapped a life with a girlfriend and a flat and a TV and a car for a lifestyle that seriously endangered my health, and I had to steal to fund my punishing addiction. On the 9th and the last time I appeared in court 15 years ago, the judge looks concerned. He looks confused. He doesn't understand why a 25-year-old man with a perfectly good education should be standing in front of him again, charged with £75,000 worth of software theft. My mum and my dad are in the courtroom, and I'm standing there feeling raw and scared and ashamed and stupid. And the judge tells me that the only reason why he has made a decision to not give me a custodial sentence of 3 years in prison is because I have committed to undertake a program of medically assisted rehabilitation. And little did I know that the mental health ward that I was to be admitted to would be the very same ward that my friend Mike would be admitted to 15 years later.
I was there. Is this working? I was there because of the helicopters that were following me. I spotted them circling overhead one day in summer. What did they want? Why were they following me? I noticed a car parked outside work. It was probably some secret government agency who was plotting against me. Chances were they'd hacked my computer. I stuck a Band-Aid over its camera. When I tried to explain all this to my friend Tiff, she looked at me like she was scared. Actually, she looked at me like I was crazy, because I was. I started to panic. It wasn't some ordinary run-of-the-mill, did I turn the oven off panic. This was some next level shit. I stopped panicking about government agencies and helicopters, and it became about nothing in particular. And the only way I can think to describe it is you're in a prison cell, and there's speakers in each of the corners, and through these speakers is broadcast a constant high-pitched sound, and it keeps getting louder and higher until it's unbearable.
Up here like this?
Until it's unbearable, and you do anything to stop it. And when the panic reached fever pitch, I became suicidal. Dramatic pause. I was in the world's smallest hotel room when I came closest to killing myself. It was the darkest night of my life, and James happened to call, and it probably saved my life. We'd known each other since university, and since I was at university and he was a heroin addict, and he persuaded me to get help. I got an emergency referral to a clinical psychiatrist, diagnosed as bipolar, and given a cocktail of mood stabilizers and antipsychotics. I should have known something was wrong when I spotted the helicopters. I should have known because it wasn't the first time I'd lost touch with reality. Like James, my issues started in childhood. I had my first mental breakdown when I was a teenager. It was terrifying. Sinister, faceless people could see through my eyes and were watching my life unfold on a giant cinema screen. I had to do everything in 3s, 5s, and 10s. From turning the light on to chewing my food. I had visual hallucinations and paranoid delusions. I thought I was a secret agent and enemies were chasing me. It was terrifying. I'm 14 years old and I'm scared. I mean, like, really scared. I have no idea what's happening to me, and I'm panicking. And the only way I can stop the panic is by cutting my arms with a knife. Somehow that brings me back to reality, and it's the only calm I can find in the relentless storm of madness. These two bouts of psychosis were 20 years apart, but in between, it was no picnic either. Easy. All my life I've experienced elated moods in which the world was brighter and more beautiful than I thought was possible. I'm cleverer and more creative. Not today, though. I'm more alive than I thought was possible, but I've always also experienced periods of deep depression. Depression is brutal. Everything becomes meaningless. All the things you previously valued become pointless. The world is a cruel and chaotic and hopeless place. And the worst thing about depression, its greatest power, is that it's entirely convincing. It feels like the truth. I was diagnosed as bipolar in 2012. I couldn't work. Interacting with the outside world was impossible, and the drugs made me tired and vacant. I moved in with James, and it was during this period that we started making art together. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table making collages. Mostly we were just making each other laugh. It was fun. And it was as I was piecing together a collage and trying to make it work when I said it. I don't know why I chose that moment in particular to tell James about the helicopters, but I did. He replied immediately by telling me about injecting heroin into his neck, which, to be honest, I thought was a little bit competitive. And it's then we started to share our stories. And once we'd opened up, we told each other everything, the whole lot. Me being a secret agent, him high on drugs, trying to break into his own flat to steal things. After a few months of making art together, James suggested that we show the works we made. I refused. The idea horrified me. To be honest, I thought he was an idiot for suggesting it. But he's very persuasive. At that point in my life, I couldn't even leave the house. My phone went unanswered, and the idea of exposing myself to public judgment and criticism by exhibiting things we've made was ridiculous. It was so far beyond what I felt capable of, but he was insistent, and eventually I conceded, but only if we did it behind the cloak of anonymity. We made up fictional characters, the Connor brothers, and I wrote a backstory. Twins who'd escaped from a cult and moved to New York and made art as a way of making sense of the world. We showed the works at an art fair in London, and they sold. And we got invited to do shows in LA, Sydney, London. A work got consigned by Christie's and more auctioned. The V&A in London took some works into their permanent collection. What started as a fun distraction at James's kitchen table had taken on a life of its own. And we never stopped talking about our mental health experiences. And I started to feel better. And the more we talked openly about it, the less shame I felt over it. And I started to notice something about the work we made. More and more, the subject matter paralleled our conversation. It became about mental health and the nature of reality. It became another way of talking about our experiences. And like the Connor brothers, it became a way of understanding the world. And eventually, it reached a point when I wanted to talk about these things publicly. We broke cover in 2014 and admitted we were the Connor brothers. It was a very scary time. The story came out in the Telegraph. My phone started to ring, so I turned it off. Emails came relentlessly, and I deleted them. Some people were a bit pissed off with what we'd done, but other people shared their stories of addiction and mental health problems, or that of their families, and it was overwhelming. After we came out of the Connor brothers, I was asked to write for newspapers about mental health. And when I did, when I shared my experiences, people began to write to me and admit their own struggles with depression. Being open about my history encouraged others to do the same, and I realized the value of being open. Not only did it help me overcome my shame at being diagnosed bipolar, it helped other people to come forward too.
We are living in a world where more and more people are suffering from depression. and the use of antidepressants is at an all-time high. Mostly, though, we still don't talk about it. Admitting a mental health problem is difficult. There is a stigma attached to it. It's as if there's a weakness of character, or there's a fault with the person. After all, why should any of us living in a free and prosperous nation feel depressed? There must be something wrong with us. There's a problem in our wiring. We are not normal. The truth is that there is no such thing as normal. It's a myth. Any of us can suffer from mental health problems. There are people in this room who will be suffering from depression. And it's not always easy to tell who. They are not always an addict or suffering from delusion. My story and Mike's story are unique, but they are not uncommon. 1 in 4 people will experience some form of depression or mental health problem at some point in their lifetime. For almost all of my life, I pretended that there was nothing wrong with me. I was too ashamed of my past to talk about it, even with my closest friends. I hid it. I did an impression of what I thought it was to be normal. And it made me feel inadequate. And it made me feel unhappy. Making art feels like being honest. I don't feel inadequate. I don't feel stupid. I feel like I'm doing something that I am good at, something that I care about. And making art has helped me to come to terms with my past. I am a recovering addict. I can say that now. Those things happened. And being an artist and talking about my stories with Mike has helped me to overcome the sense of shame that I feel about it. How often does someone ask us how we are feeling, and we say that we are fine, no matter how we are really feeling? We do this in part because we think that it is unacceptable to say that we are struggling or that we are unhappy. We worry about being a burden, and we fear being rejected. But ask yourself, when somebody reveals troubles in their life, how do you react? Do you judge them? Do you push them away? Do you treat their problems lightly? No, of course you don't. You listen with compassion. You listen with an ear towards healing. That's what you do. You are caring and compassionate people. Why then, when we are in need, do we feel that others will turn on us? We have to shift this. And your sharing your honest truth is the first step, even if it feels risky.
This man's telling us I'm done, and I really nearly am, so just bear with me, It felt very risky to say to James that I felt suicidal that night in the hotel, but thank God I did. And A staggering 800,000 of us kill ourselves every year. That's more people than die from war, terrorism, or homicide. And think about that number for a minute. 800,000. It means that during this talk, 27 people will have taken their own lives. There is an urgent need to break the silence around mental health issues. Because it's not just the depression that kills people, it's the associated shame. It's the fear of speaking out. It's the fear that we'll be stigmatized if we admit we have a problem. Those of us who've experienced mental health problems need to find it in ourselves to be open about it, to bring our struggles into the open, and by doing so, invite other people to do the same. Our culture will not shift until we are living in the truth of our experience. I hid my mental health problems from everyone, and it nearly killed me. I've learnt over the past 4 years that talking helps, and for me, art helps too. One thing I learnt when I finally admitted I had a problem is that the shame around admitting mental illness is misplaced. People won't reject you. In fact, it's quite the opposite. People are invariably kind and supportive. They want to help. For those of you who are struggling, I implore you to reach out to someone and let them know. I promise you it will help, and I promise you that the world will not mistake your vulnerability for weakness. People are waiting to help you. They want to. You just need to give them the chance. And when someone shares with you, offer them your kindest and best self. Your kindness might save their life. I believe in a world where we can see each other for all of who we are and accept the complicated parts of each other. James and I see it happen every day of our lives when we talk about our stories. And I realize our stories are not the easiest to listen to. Thank you to everyone in this room for being the type of people that can see and hear about our stories and not believe that they define us. The act of listening compassionately and offering kindness in response to each other's stories can transform the world, and it can save lives. Thank you.